guys, welcome back to my channel. It is your boy Aves. Ho Shining beat me to the punch with this video. So she beat me. So definitely check out her video on this topic of rage baiting in K-pop. I already watched it, very well put together, and she explained everything perfectly well. Her video's up, so I'm gonna definitely put a link to her video in the description box. So basically, rage baiting, or rage farming as it's often called, is internet slang that refers to a manipulative tactic to elicit outrage with the goal of increasing internet traffic. So based on the definition, it has little to do with money and more to do with notoriety, attention, publicity, clicks, internet traffic, how many eyes can be on this particular group. Whether or not it's a good thing or a bad thing doesn't matter to the company. I initially thought it was money based, but it's not. It's about just attention in general. So basically the point is to create rage bait, to bait you into getting upset and triggered so that you can look at the idol's performances, promotions, comebacks. But the question still stands, why go the rage bait route to achieve this? Rage baiting is making any and every attempt to get attention, whether good or bad. It's also a form of manipulation, right? Someone who baits you manipulates your emotions by saying or doing something they know will upset you. So companies know that this stuff will upset people, and they do it anyway for that purpose, just so that they can get notoriety and eyes and ears on their group's comebacks. It's a very toxic way of promoting an idol group, in my humble opinion. If you lose your cool or respond out of anger, they have the upper hand. They can then accuse you of being unbalanced or out of control. They might even claim you're attacking them. And we've seen that quite a bit, especially with like YouTubers that use rage bait, which I'm going to get into in a little bit. Sometimes it can lead to gaslighting behavior, where the creator tries to convince you that you didn't see what you clearly saw, all in an attempt to divert attention away from the actual problem or to save themselves. My honest thoughts based on what I've observed is that there are some things that are legitimately done with malicious intent to invoke a response within a religion, a culture, an ethnic group, or race, etc. However, I have also found that oftentimes fans determine what rage baiting is based on perceived discrimination, racial bias, and racial suffering and oppression, and even religious symbolism. That one is very tricky, at least for me personally, and here's why. I don't really care that idols use Christian symbolism as long as they're not mocking God. And I guess that's kind of where the religious thing comes in, because some people may not value Christianity, but they value Islam or they value Hinduism or something like that. But we all view our religions in the same way. And so if they get offended because a company uses religious imagery in idol group comebacks, yeah, 9 times out of 10, the companies know exactly what they're doing. And let me be clear, when I say mocking God, I mean stuff like what Lil Nas X does. I know he's a Western artist, but same difference. Mocking God by being on the cross himself, cosplaying as Jesus while playing on TikTok or whatever, like he's eating the communions, but he's doing it in a very disrespectful way. Again, this is a Western artist. However, the difference between rage baiting in the West and in Korea is that K-pop companies are subtle. They don't do it out loud in a very obviously disrespectful manner, whereas Westerners, they will blatantly disrespect without a second thought. They don't care who they offend, they just do it. However, I do believe that you can have Christian symbolism in your comebacks as idols, whether you're a group or a solo artist, and it not be offensive, like what Jonghyun did with the album that he came out with, Bass, his first mini album. He had the sash, remember the purple sash or the white sash with the cross symbol on it, and it was supposed to be representative of his Christian faith. Also, the Hallelujah song that he had in the album. So it all had concept in it regarding his bass album, but it was not mocking, right? It was aesthetically cool, but it served the point of Jonghyun's comeback. And that kind of thing is not mocking Christianity or mocking a religion, in my opinion. But if you're going beyond that and you're just throwing symbolism like Hinduism stuff in there just for the sake of catching eyes, yeah, that's not cool. It's rage bait. And companies, like I said, 9 out of 10 times, They know exactly what they're doing when they do that. I don't want to jump ahead of myself, but I do believe that no matter if a company is using this kind of imagery for creative purposes because they really think it's cool, or whether they're using it with the distinctive purpose of rage baiting, it's still rage bait because it's subjective. The person who is a fan who sees a company do this to their religion or their culture, they're going to perceive it as rage bait even if it's not. So that's why I'm saying it's still rage bait, because whether you do it for good or ill, it's still inciting rage within some part of the fandom or community of people. Even if I don't think it's rage bait, other people might think it's rage bait. So it doesn't really matter whether I believe it is rage bait or not, or whether I know it's rage bait or not. It's going to be rage bait anyway. That's just how it is. It's also important to note that for the sake of K-netizens, idols have to always make sure to not wear clothes that contain certain imagery so as to not cause outrage within the group's fandom. For example, the Japanese rising sun symbol, which is one of the biggest no-nos in South Korea due to the bad history between the two countries. But that's a whole other video in and of itself. The sad thing is that while K-pop idols may not have noticed or thought anything of it, it being whatever imagery is on their clothing, and that could be any imagery, the companies will use even things like that to get eyes on their groups, especially if it was the company's idea for the artist to wear that piece of clothing in the first place. And in some cases, it is that way, where companies will have their idols wearing controversial clothing, and then the idol will get flack for it instead of the company. Sometimes the company gets flack for it, or I don't know, it's kind of mixed between the company and the idol, depending on the circumstances, but mainly it's like the idol that gets the biggest wave of backlash and just full-blown hate when something like that happens. Things like that are harmful for an artist's career, but helpful for the company. And in the end, all the company has to do is place blame on the idol by having them apologize or sending them on hiatus, and thus theoretically absolving the company of any wrongdoing on their end. And I say theoretically because people like you and me, we can clearly see through all that. We know exactly what's going on in those instances, and companies don't get away with it, at least from people that know that it's not really the idol's fault. In some cases, it is actually the company's. So yeah, the companies don't get away with it like they think they do, trying to place all the blame on the artist and by taking no accountability as the company, but that don't fly by us. That said, there are K-pop artists who really love this hairstyle or that hairstyle, this look or that look, and want to wear those things, and in my opinion shouldn't be accused of being or doing something evil for what they want to wear, be it clothing, hairstyles, or what have you. Which leads me to my next point. To say that everything is rage bait is to assume the intentions of the companies and individual K-pop idols who you believe are creating said rage bait. Knowing for certain that a thing is rage bait or not doesn't matter to most people. It's almost like if you do it, show it, or say it, it's rage bait. But that is not the case for every situation. It really is a dangerous thing to assume others' intentions without knowing all the facts. Because when you do that, what ends up happening is you start generalizing every case, saying that every time someone wears a do-rag or a hairstyle or a piece of clothing, it's automatically a rage bait issue. The truth of the matter is, sometimes these things are done with good intentions, and other times they are done to incite rage within fandoms. Can you tell the difference? No. Does that mean that you in turn can be reckless and call all of it rage bait? Also no. What if that artist wants to wear that hairstyle? Is it rage bait, or are they just wanting to wear whatever they want to wear without constantly being judged or called istophobe every time they put on a piece of clothing or wear a certain hairstyle? So I think it all has to do with intent. Unless the companies or the idols state the intentions as to why they're wearing what they're wearing, you could assume anything. So it's subjective, but ultimately the answer, at least from what I've observed when I've looked at rage bait issues, is the answer is no. You can't tell the difference. For some people, it's they don't want to see the difference. For others, it's more so there is no difference. Like, just in their minds, rage bait's rage bait. I personally believe that not all publicity is good publicity. There's bad publicity too, to the point where idols could literally get so enthralled in the publicity that it affects their mental health and they end up going on hiatus. Then you have the company put out statements saying, yeah, this particular member is going on hiatus for his mental health or her mental health, da 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 da. So there's bad effects, but in the company's eyes, it's not really a loss for them. So some companies are actually trying to intentionally spark outrage because it's good for promotion, which is very twisted to me, but that's how it works. You can think of it in this way as well. There are companies that will market their idols in a particular comeback, and it'll look like in their promotion photos and things like that, that they are maybe possibly copying a Western artist's style in like the artistic design of everything. Not even the song, you don't even hear the song yet. You just see the promotion photos, right? The teaser photos. And in those photos, it looks very similar to either what a K-pop group has already done from a whole nother label or what a Western artist has done. And in the company's mind, all publicity is good publicity no matter what, good or bad. So they will just capitalize off of that because look, it gets people talking. People are going to have more eyes on the comeback and everything's great. But with the idols themselves, it does harm them. And that's another reason why I think that companies don't care about idols like they claim they do or like they try to act like they do. There is the whole idea of cultural appropriation, specifically within the Black K-pop fans circle, is way more harmful than anything else. And it's like given a whole other platform of its own with regards to what constitutes as rage baiting. If an idol's wearing a do-rag or hairstyles that are worn by Black people, I wouldn't say Black owned, but predominantly worn by Black people, hairstyles, then it causes Black outrage. But is it intentional? I think in this scenario, it is basically whatever makes the fans angry. Because there are Black K-pop fans who don't care about an idol wearing a hairstyle that is not within their culture, whereas there's a group that do. So I think it's basically just based on whatever group of Black K-pop fans are offended. Do I agree with it? No. Because I don't think that anybody should be mad personally off of something like that. If you guys recall, Taemin came out with his Guilty song, and in the MV, people were going nuts about him wearing a quote-unquote war bonnet from the Native American Indians, but it was not a war bonnet at all. It just looked a little similar to it, but it's not a war bonnet. War bonnets look way different than that. And so a lot of rage bait went towards that. That wasn't intentional, by the way. It was based on what the fans perceived. And so, like I said, whatever netizens perceive as rage bait is rage bait. And the perceived rage bait by netizens is what the companies use as fuel for the comebacks of their idols and things like that. So I think that's kind of how this works, because it gets people talking about your group, but talking about the promotion, talking about everything pertaining to the comeback and maybe going even deeper into that. And companies actually use that. I don't like that personally, but profiting off of Black outrage as well as religious outrage, even outrage based on the tradition or the culture of a people, fandom outrage and things like that. All of these different kinds of outrages and rage baitings are profitable for the company but harmful for the idol. And that's the problem that I have, is that it's harmful for the idol or the group. You could even argue, and this is probably a really, really, really big one. I'm off script, but I really need to get this out. Kingdom, the K-pop group. I don't know if it's intentional that they were causing rage bait. I really don't. I think people mistake the intentions of companies oftentimes, okay? Please hear me. But when Kingdom did like the fantasy world in the Japan setting, Koreans got so mad because of that. You can do all these other nations and stuff, not Japan, because of what happened a long time ago between Korea and Japan. You know, they have a bad history together. So K-netizens were so pissed at the company for doing this with Kingdom. And maybe you could argue that they did this on purpose, but I don't think it helped Kingdom. Any publicity is good publicity, but there's like a certain line that you're not supposed to cross with K-netizens on the topic of rage bait, and portraying like ancient Japan stuff is one of those lines that you're not supposed to cross. Personally, I don't think this helped the company or the group. I think people got so pissed. It did get eyes on Kingdom. It did get notoriety. It did get talked about. It did get clicks. It did get all kinds of things. Yes, it did what it was supposed to do. But I don't know if that was welcomed in that way by the company or not. All I know is that the group was affected by that. And I don't know to what degree. I just know that there were positives and negatives in there. I feel like I'm going all over the place because all these things are starting to come to my mind at once when I'm thinking about the rage baiting stuff. So yeah, I mean, I would rest my case there, honestly. I was initially going to talk about the positives and negatives of rage baiting, but the positives and negatives seem to go hand in hand almost seemingly. And it's unfortunate. I think one of the things that really gets on my nerves personally, getting in my fifis now, is that Black people act like their outrage is above everyone else's and it should be viewed that way when they're not taking into account that there are other outrages that are on par with Black outrage when it comes to the promotion of K-pop groups and stuff. Because everybody has their own feelings and opinions about hair and things like that. I think to view your feelings about Black outrage and to place it above other outrage within the K-pop sphere, I think that's wrong to do. It's like placing my trauma, my pain above everybody else's and saying that mine matters more than anybody else's, whether it's a religion or a culture. It's above all that. And anyone who says it's not is racist. You know, that kind of thing. Like no other race can tell Black people what is greater or lesser rage bait. I view it as equal rage bait, in my opinion. It does, like, honestly, because it does the same thing. I think Black K-pop stans, not all of them, but y'all know I'm not trying to generalize when I say Black K-pop stans. I'm not trying to say all of them. I'm just saying Black K-pop stans tend to prioritize their perception of Black outrage, which is based on their perception of Black culture, as the most disrespected, the most hated, the most culturally inappropriate, the most misunderstood, when in fact that's not the case at all. Because if you look at how K-pop idols in the past have taken religious symbols that they've incorporated into their comebacks and their MVs and things like that, that they've gotten so much flack for. You can't say that Black outrage is dominant above that. Above that? No. I think the reason why Black people do feel that way though is because when it comes to religious symbols, they get flack for it, the companies. And then as a result, like I said in the last video, they'll take a scene that is literally the same thing, but it's like not with all those symbolisms and religious stuff. And they will take that one and replace the one that had the religious symbols in it in an MV or whatever, just so that people cannot be mad. Or they'll cut out a promotion photo and just like get rid of it or whatever, or they'll try to Photoshop it or whatever. Fine, but I guess Black people feel like, well, they don't remove the dreads, they don't remove the cornrows, they don't remove the do-rags. It's very different when it comes to the Black K-pop stan perspective of outrage. I guess ultimately what I'm trying to say is that Black K-pop stans feel like their culture is the most disrespected because the companies don't make changes to accommodate their feelings about what is being done with the idols. But then you gotta also understand that sometimes the company is not the ones making the decision for them to wear their hairstyles that way. Sometimes it might be the idol themselves because it looked cool and they liked the hairstyle. But either way, it doesn't get changed for Black K-pop stans, and so they feel like they're the most disrespected, and that's where their outrage comes from, is the lack of respect, because the companies are not willing to do for them what they do for the religious K-pop stans. And I think that's where that comes from, that feeling for Black K-pop stans. So I do understand that aspect, and the end result is still the same. That's the thing. Regardless of how any group of K-pop stans feel about what a K-pop group does, it doesn't change the fact that companies actually do profit off of Black outrage. So now I understand what that means after looking at it. And yeah, I get it now. I don't like it. I think it's kind of weird. I don't think that companies should do that. But I also think that there's an aspect of this where the fandoms kind of take outrage a little too far and they get mad off of everything, right? Becoming very sensitive about everything. And I'm very critical about my Black community when it comes to this stuff, because I think there are just some things that we put our energy and anger in that we really shouldn't, because it's not worth it. It really isn't. Like another K-pop idol wearing a hairstyle that you associate more commonly with black people, like that's causing you to have to go to the doctor and take medication because you just can't sleep at night thinking about how that K-pop idol apparently disrespected your race by wearing a hairstyle like that. That's kind of weird to me. And of course, I'm being cheeky. I know. But it is weird to me to see that kind of behavior from my people. But either way, I do understand the rage baiting in K-pop now a little bit more. So just wanted to throw that out there. Then you have rage bait from K-pop channels that talk about everything K-pop related. And I think this is very harmful and dangerous. There is rage baiting in K-pop. I'm not going to sit here and say there's not. However, being able to discern and figure out what is rage bait and what is not sometimes is very hard to do, because sometimes our feelings can get in the way and we'll assume that something's rage bait even though it's not, because what was done by the company before to market an idol group was rage bait, actual rage bait, like they were appropriating something or using religious symbolism in an inappropriate way. But then sometimes we'll look at something like hairstyles, which honestly, I think the hairstyle thing is subjective to netizens' feelings. It is, because there's a group of people that are like, that's appropriation. And then there's people like me that's like, no, it's not. It's not appropriation, right? I don't care that they wear that hairstyle. It's their hair. We don't own it by right. We don't own it by conquest. We don't own it by privilege. Even though we claim we own it by privilege, we don't. It's a hairstyle. It doesn't affect me at all. So there's different perceptions and they play a part in rage bait. But then there's the obvious rage baiting, like what YouTubers do when they make like clickbait videos and stuff. Like the one I was talking about with Onu. Onu says goodbye. And then they had like a funeral procession picture. Oh God, even when I think about it, I get pissed. This kind of ties into something that I want to bring up as well. Some people don't know this, and this is very deep. I think rage baiting has evolved to a point where it is become a sympathetic thing to capitalize off of the pain and trauma of idols, using it as a way to get clicks, likes, views, and to basically romanticize mental illness. That's rage bait right there. And there are YouTube shorts out there. There are YouTube videos out there that do that. It's very disgusting. And if you scroll in the comments, you'll see people glorifying this stuff. Oh, it's so sad. Oh, this is very disgusting. Like showing up close the tears and trying to like relate it to mental illness and all the... I think it was called something like 5 K-pop idols who passed away basically because of mental illness, right? And they brought up Jonghyun and they brought up Moonbin and they brought up some female idols as well. And I just, that is disgusting. You see on TikTok where people are trying to romanticize Tourette's and they don't actually have Tourette's. They're just pretending to so that they can get clicks and likes and sympathy and all that stuff. But then when you find out the truth, rage bait, right? There it is. It was all rage bait from the beginning, but when you find out the truth, it becomes even more apparent. Faking mental illnesses, faking psychological problems and things like that, that's evil. That's evil. I remember there was either a TikToker or somebody that was faking PTSD. That's very dark, bro. Like, no, absolutely not. That's, oh God. Oh, that stuff gets on my nerves. You talk about rage bait, baby, that's rage bait. Like, that's rage bait. Straight up. I think K-pop is different because it has a more subtle way of doing it. It's very subtle in some cases. In other cases, it's a little more out there. But I don't know if it's all designed to cause rage bait or if it's just genuinely the creative direction that the group is going in. YouTubers that do this, it's way more blatant in your face. If you're not someone who romanticizes mental illness, if you're not someone who glorifies mental illness, if you're not someone who thinks of it as beautiful, seeing people cry, beautiful tears, like that's just, that's so toxic. That's weird. You look so beautiful when you cry. Like, that's so disgusting to me. I'm so sorry. That's weird to me. There's nothing precious about tears, about crying. They need comfort, right? They need comfort. not someone going, oh, that's the kind of mess I'm talking about. It's way more in your face when it comes to YouTubers doing it. But with companies, it's like a strategy. And some companies don't intend to do it. I strongly believe that. But again, I think at the end of the day, netizens have the final say in regards to what constitutes as rage bait. So I hope that makes sense. I really hope that makes sense. My hope is that we don't always generalize every company, especially the K-pop idols, because they're accused of so many things by so many people for wearing something when all they want is to just live as an artist without being assumed the absolute worst of by people who claim to, quote, have the idol's best intentions at heart, but will turn their backs on them as soon as they wear something the fans don't like. Let's try to approach these things a little bit better in the future, okay? That's my hope. But yes, that is it. There is one thing that I will say. I know that not every case is, oh, the company is just trying to appreciate the culture or appreciate the religion. I know sometimes it is clickbait. It is, just a way to incite rage within a community. So I'm not saying that every company's doing this. So please hear me on that, okay? I don't want you to take away from this video that I'm saying every company and idol is trying to appreciate the culture. Two things are true at once. There are people and companies that do intend to do this stuff to incite rage within fandoms. And then there's the side that are doing this because they don't see the harm in it. They want to just express their love for like the style of a particular thing. And if you think about it, an argument could be made for that. If you think about it in this way, that there are companies that view religious pieces of clothing as like something that could be incorporated into fashion pieces, right? Things like that. And so they use them in K-pop idol comebacks for that purpose. But I think in many religions, just viewing a certain piece of clothing as a fashion piece is considered disrespectful. And because it's not my religion that views things that way as far as how other religions view clothing within the religion, I don't feel like I should be speaking on that. So I'm not going to assume this or that. But I will say that when it comes to mocking Jesus and from my religion, I view it in the same way that other religions view K-pop companies putting religious clothing into the comebacks of the K-pop groups. So we kind of view it in the same way. When it comes to Christianity, however, I care more about the God that you're mocking rather than the clothing that you're wearing. Yeah, I just wanted to put that out there because I think it's very important to highlight that point. It kind of reminds me of, and I know this is not like a religion or anything, but when it comes to Black culture, and I've tried my best not to harp on Black culture too much, but I think I did still harp a little bit. I thought I was a little bit more calm in this video with it though. So I'm proud of myself for that. Pat on the back to me. But I will say this, Black culture tends to treat itself like a religion instead of a culture. And so we say this is ours and that is ours and you can't take this from us. And it's kind of like a cult, right? What happens in the culture stays within the culture and it does not go outside of it. And if you are a Black person and you have a different opinion, well, then you are excommunicado. Your Black card is revoked. So it's kind of like a religious cult of sorts when it comes to Black culture, at least how a group of K-pop stans treat it. But I want to say it is not always the case that people are doing this stuff to offend Black people or to offend people who are religiously practicing a certain religion. It's not intended for that all the time. But because we have seen so much of it, we can't tell the difference. We just fire away and say, hey, they're appropriating or disrespecting our religion or culture or whatever the case. And we just name it as that instead of seeing it as, okay, well, maybe we're not understanding what's going on here. And so I think we need to maybe take a step back, not get angry, because the first thing we do is we get angry or we get upset. We go buck wild online with so many different accusations to companies and things like that. And I'm not saying that companies are innocent or whatever. I'm just saying that I don't think every company's doing this with the same intention. If they are, I'm more than happy to be corrected on that. This was a very difficult topic to talk about. I'm finally finished. You see how long it took me. But I'm glad that I could talk about it. I hope that I conveyed every point as clear could be. I hope I did convey every point as carefully and with as much tact as possible. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for liking and commenting and subscribing to the channel. Love you guys, and I will see you in the next video. Peace. Bye.